Okay. I might as well start. She's not here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to declare this meeting open at 6:03. The town of Bassendean acknowledges the Wadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the region. Councillors, we will be starting a new process at the next week's meeting where councillors will make a declaration in good faith and declare that they duly, faithfully, honestly and with integrity fulfil the duties of their office for all the people of the town of Bassendean according to the best of their judgment and ability. So what will happen is, councillors, when you're in the chambers, you will sign the sheet that's passed around, and councillors online, we will probably from next week ask you to make a declaration, okay? Or to send it in signed prior to the meeting. Okay. Attendances and apologies. We have two councillors who will be attending online. Councillor Polifka, who is the Deputy Mayor, is already online for the meeting, and Councillor Talon Ains will be running around about 10 minutes late and will join the meeting shortly. Councillor Emily Wilding is an apology for tonight. I believe all the officers are in attendance. We have a new gentleman on the desk tonight, Mr. Joel Warner, who is the recently appointed Manager of Community Services. Welcome, Mr. Warner. Councillors, do I have any declaration? Oh, we have Councillor Jermaine Burke, who appears to be running late as well. So I will advise once the councillor online and the councillor in the chamber for the minute taker. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest on any item? Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a declaration of interest on item 12.2. My interest is an impartiality interest, and being that I'm the author of the history of Bassendean. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you give me a minute, because my computer naturally closed down. I just need, can I get you to get another device? Sorry, it's actually not on here.
What are you doing?
The announcements. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Because you have that announcement there.
Yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a couple of announcements under item 4. On behalf of the town of Bassendean, I would like to acknowledge the passing of Mr. Arthur Leggett on the 6th of April this year. Mr. Leggett was 106 years old and WA's oldest surviving ex-prisoner of war. Reflecting on an extraordinary life, Mr. Leggett was born on September 8, 1918, and bravely fought in the Second World War, serving in the Middle East, fighting in Libya, Greece and Crete, enduring punishing extremes of desert warfare and never wavering in his duties. In 1941, at the age of 22, Mr. Leggett was captured and endured great hardship along with other Allied soldiers in various prisoner of war camps. After years of imprisonment and finally being liberated liberated by US forces, Mr. Leggett returned home to selflessly dedicate the rest of his life to ensuring that the sacrifices of his fellow veterans would be remembered for generations to come. The West Australian public are invited to reflect on the extraordinary life of Arthur Leggett on Saturday, the 10th of May. There will be a military led procession from Parliament House precinct down St George's Terrace, flanked by a gun carriage and the West Australian Army Band. The march will conclude at St George's Cathedral, where a state funeral service will be held to honour Arthur Leggett. A second announcement, the town of Bassendean are partnering with other local governments for the 2025 WA Tree Festival that will run through to the 10th of May. There are multiple opportunities and planned events for residents to celebrate the state's unique tree species and to explore the diverse ways in which local governments and volunteers are tackling increasingly hot, dry summers that impact tree canopy, wildlife and the environment. The town of Bassendean street tree planting will commence after the first rains in May. The ever-popular Plants to Residents program continues to provide opportunities for locals to add native plants and trees to their gardens. And there are so many other initiatives, such as rebates to enable you to convert verges into water-wise gardens. Greening Our Suburb is an incredible collaboration between residents, the town and amazing volunteers. Go to the town's website to read about these various programs or download our local Thrive newsletter. Thank you. And welcome, Councillor Ames. I'm assuming you can hear me clearly.
Absolutely, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your flexibility and understanding tuning in remotely this evening. Trust everyone as well in the chambers.
Thank you. Okay. We'll now move on to public statement time. Statements at the council briefing session must relate to an item that is on the OCM agenda being considered. Statements are to be directed to myself, and we have received none by email. I would ask members of the audience if you would have any statements you'd like to make. I do know that one member of the audience has put in a application for a deputation, but we're at statement time at the moment. Okay, so no statements. Right, we'll move on to public question time. Again, I'd ask, there are no public questions that have been sent through by email, and I will ask if there's any members of the public who would like to ask a question or two. If you'd like to come to the microphone, state your name and address.
Hello, I'm Kate Davies.
Is the microphone on?
Oh, is it on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is on? Cool. From 16A Nurstead Avenue. I sent an email to all the councillors yesterday. I guess I would just like to check that that was received and read.
Yes.
And to sort of, I'll leave it to the deputations to really outline the issue, but I just wanted to say very passionately, I listened to what was said last meeting about the protections in the precinct structure plan, and my question is there any good reason why we can't also have a heritage overlay?
I will ask the officer if she would like to respond. Ms Brenner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We might take that on notice this evening, thank you, if that's okay.
Okay. If you're taking on notice, will you engage directly?
Yes, very happy to do so, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so that question's been taken on notice. I'm just going to seek a point of clarity with you. I received an application for a deputation from Katerina, but the email that I've received from you did have a link to a deputation, but I thought that was a deputation from last year as an example.
It was.
Right.
It was. I sent. It's just because this process is so repetitive. I just wanted to restate what I said in December 2023, and so I included a copy of my December 2023 deputation.
Okay. when we come to that, I'll make a determination because we're trying to raise new issues as we go. So if you are doing a deputation, I would ask that you keep it to salient points and to raise any new issues because it is a new report that's in front of you. So
Well,
I didn't realise you were asking for a deputation. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't asking for a deputation. I feel like I said what I wanted to say in the deputation
Okay.
that I gave previously. But previously we were told, like, okay, thank you for the deputation. Wait until the precinct structure plan is out and we can tell you what we can do under the precinct structure plan. So we have indeed very patiently waited. And from what I see from the answer that was presented last month, that the precinct structure plan didn't answer those issues. Those issues remain unanswered.
The precinct structure plan is not yet complete.
Last week we heard that under the precinct structure plan we could have some protections that would be statutorily more robust than having heritage protection. And in my email last night, which I was trying to save time and not completely reiterate, was that doesn't actually make sense. It doesn't make sense to include in that area.
So can I try and answer that
Yeah.
again, going back on some of the information, and then I will refer to the CEO if need be. But basically, a policy can be revoked by future councils. A policy doesn't have as much strength in legislative format as what a precinct structure plan does. So that is why the officers are advocating that design guidelines should be incorporated into the precinct structure plan because ultimately that will provide protections that are, or provide guidelines that are more strongly adhered to going forward. But a policy, for instance, a council can change a policy. We've got policies on the agenda tonight which can be amended or changed by any council going forward. So in that respect, a policy may not provide you with long-term benefits. So that was one of the aspects that I picked up from the dialogue from the officer last month. But I'll ask the CEO, would you like to add anything to that?
Madam Mayor, you've said it very well, to be honest. But so the PSP, and it's in the report, so I'm not sure why there's not clarity. But I think last month
I can clarify why there's no clarity because I did read the report.
Okay. Well, we can deal with that outside the chamber, but quite simply that the design guidelines that we've about to start a workshop with and invite residents to participate will decide what those protections are from a design point of view. So that is much more stringent because it's legislated. The WA Planning Commission will actually support and endorse those design guidelines and they'll become embedded into our scheme. Whereas a policy, and we have a council election this year, there could be a new council in October, November, and that policy might be revoked at a moment's notice.
But if there has never been a policy, if there has never been a recognition of the historic value of Nurstead Estate, then how can there ever be an argument that it should be preserved? Even though a policy may not last forever, it doesn't mean that it doesn't fleetingly have value and that it won't historically have value.
Well, the policy, if I may, the policy requires as much effort and time as doing it through the PSP.
Why can't we do both? Is it not sufficiently important?
Well, it's a waste of resources to do both when one has a statutory standing and one doesn't.
Except one includes areas that are irrelevant and the other doesn't.
Okay, I'm going to ask if any of the other members of the audience would like to ask a question while we ponder what you've just said. So are there any other questions from other members? Okay. What I will do, Kate, I'll allow you to have an additional question, but if we can just focus on what is most important to you in those questions. I did read your email. It was quite comprehensive. I'm sure that all the other councillors have read your email from yesterday as well. So I do have an understanding of your perspective. But what is the highest priority and what is the highest question you've got at the moment that you would like addressed by the staff?
It's about recognition from Bassendean Council and the state government about the importance of this piece of history. And whilst having history in books alone is one thing, tethering it to the ground that it's related to actually embeds it in a way that I think future historians will appreciate and enables us to actually act on the ground on the basis of that. I do think that the two kinds of protection are significantly different, and I appreciate both.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Kate. Okay. I'll ask deputations. Katerina, would you like to come to the microphone and provide your deputation?
Madam Mayor, my name is Katerina Wolf. I reside at 4 Newstead Avenue in a very small suburb.
That's okay, you can't break it. So,
You think I can't?
no, you can't. So,
Okay. Let me start by expressing my appreciation for the support provided by councillors and various town of Bassendean officers today. And I do acknowledge it has been a long process and it has been a repetitive process for everyone. However, and that's where I'm coming from today, I must express my concern that the community's original objectives have over time been somewhat misrepresented and arguably reframed. My aim tonight is to point out what I believe are methodological flaws upon which recommendations have been based and to clarify some of the community aims. All the way back in November 2023, the local community overwhelmingly responded to the Earlsbury Court Heritage Area consultation, proposing the inclusion of the former Newstead estate in the existing heritage area, citing strong cultural, historical and architectural connections. In fact, we proposed that the area should be more accurately labelled Newstead Estate Heritage Area for 2 reasons. First, the current Earlsbury Court Heritage Area includes only one listed heritage property, Earlsbury Court, or Earlsbury House, and historically Earlsbury sat at the end of Newstead Avenue prior to being subdivided around the turn of the century. Tonight's discussion and the decision scheduled for next week are based on a methodology that I believe is flawed for 2 reasons. First of all, by excluding Earlsbury Court from the Bassendean District Centre and broader build form discussions, this historic site has become isolated and a somewhat floating cluster of houses on the planning map. It's now disconnected from its surrounding heritage context, even though its only access point is via Newstead Avenue. The Federation-style houses along Newstead Avenue were built around the same time and in a similar style to Earlsbury House, and the former home of which is the former home of the Commission of Railways, which is a Category 1 listed heritage property. This original cluster of homes forms a visual, historical and cultural corridor that stretches from Earlsbury House all the way to the Category 2 heritage property at 8 Thompson Road, which is probably better known as the home of that Moreton Bay fig tree, which dates back all to 1874. That's the house. Prior to the 1902 subdivision, the entire area belonged to the same parcel of land, and this is what we've seen before. This is when it was subdivided. So its historical value is clearly recognised. The former Newstead estate is already included in the town's official heritage trail. My second issue lies in how the methodology upon which considerations in relation to item 12.2 are based has diluted heritage value by expanding that area under consideration. Item 12.2 refers to a previous related item dated 19th December 2023, which Madam Mayor you just referred to, but that report only addressed Newstead Estate in the context of Earlsbury Court. By expanding the boundary to include Lamb Street, parts of Thompson Road and newer developments well beyond the original scope, including areas not even located in Success Hill, the town has diluted the heritage significance of one of Bassendean's oldest clusters of homes. Indeed, I'm talking about an area that predates what we refer to today as Bassendean, because it was originally located in West Guildford. And it is on this map, that particular area I'm referring to. So So my aim is to reframe this and go back to what we initially talked to. The heritage assessment refers to percentage of heritage properties across a successful frame. But this is misleading. Indeed, the authors of the report acknowledge that heritage value cannot be determined based on percentage or set formulas. Instead, I urge Council to focus on one simple fact. Every single one of the original nursed estate dwellings still exists today and is lovingly catered for by its current residents. So if you have a look at this, each of these Federation-style homes, and this is a photo taken from the former Santa Rosa Distillery Tower, unfortunately no longer there, every single one of these homes on there is still there today, 120 years later. Can't see the oval because it wasn't even there yet, or we didn't have the grandstand. So, I said each of these Federation-style homes is still intact. Change has occurred, market gardens have been developed, grazing land has been subdivided, new homes have been built as Perth has become more developed. But the heart of the original estate remains in its entirety. It hasn't changed. So what we're asking for, this is what the community seeks to protect. Not the houses themselves, actually. They are lovingly catered and passionately catered for by their current residents. What we're seeking is, first of all, formal recognition of the historical importance of the former nursed estate, one of the oldest areas in Bassendean, predating the town itself and once part of West Guildford. This area is older than any areas in our town that have been formally recognised in the form of heritage areas. The only difference is that nursed estate is somewhat tucked away on the other side of Guildford Road and hence somewhat out of sight and out of mind. Design guidelines tailored to this unique precinct, guidelines that reflect its historical, cultural, architectural and geographic connection to Earlsbury Court and 8 Thompson Road, rather than generic form-built rules designed for much broader areas, so the so-called successful south frame. That's what we're actually looking for. So in closing up, the current proposal seeks to apply design guidelines across a vast area covering different contexts, ultimately undermining the cultural and architectural integrity of the former nursed estate. If adopted, this risks eroding not just the home significance, but the living memory of Bassendean's earliest history. Dedicated build form guidelines do not prevent the introduction of a heritage area to explicitly recognise and signpost the unique historical value of this precinct, as Kate has just alluded to. So please support our request to formally designate it as a heritage area and to protect its future as a visual link to our shared past. Thank you.
Thank you, Katarina. Councillors. Councillor Carter.
Oh, thank you, Katarina.
Sorry.
Can I be clear that what you want is to have the Nurstead Heritage Precinct running from Thompson Street to Earls Ferry and incorporate the Earls Ferry house. The rest of it being not as historic has no part of this. Is your argument that have I got that right?
That's correct, Councillor Carter. So the original proposal was to really look at this corridor between Guildford, the Earls Ferry, sorry, not Guildford, West Guildford, but Earls Ferry Court and the number 8 Thompson Road property, and then having that visual connection which directly links to the historical background and the design and architectural kind of presentation of those particular buildings in the entire area. We believe that the other areas that come on to, and that's kind of what crystallises in the report, they reflect a completely different design and a completely different era. And by putting form build guidelines into place that reflect the entire frame, even though it's labelled Success Hill, will completely dilute what Nurstead Avenue and that area between Earls Ferry and number 8 Thompson Road actually stands for and represents. Because all of a sudden we're going to have form build guidelines that actually, represent a hodgepodge of loads of different things. And that's what we're worried about.
Okay. Councillor Polifka, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Following on from Councillor Carter's question, so to confirm, it would be every house which has a Nurstead address Earls Ferry House and then 8 Thompson. Is that correct?
Well, that was the original proposal when we kind of, as part of the Earls Ferry consultation period, we kind of put a proposal forward that basically provided that corridor and that link, that visual link. It's really hard to kind of patch it up. So the idea is really that you've got a heritage precinct that provides that visual kind of connection and corridor between the two existing heritage sites.
And your position is that by jettisoning the properties that are of less historical merit, that would then enhance the prospects and the arguments towards preserving those with a Nurstead address, Earls Ferry and 8 Thompson.
Well, no, it's not so much about the preserving, it's about the recognition of an area of cultural significance to the town of Bassendean and to the residents of Bassendean and actually well beyond. So there are the two things there. Yes, there is the Form Bill guidelines, but the other part really is that recognition of an important part of our history and to formally recognise that.
So there would be recognition, and I mean, recognition by itself doesn't really go anywhere. How would you see that recognition being manifest? Is it just through design controls by way of the built form, or is there something else that you would see as being the manifestation of that acknowledgement?
Yeah, so first, so the design controls to the built form, well, as I said before, in my opinion, it shouldn't be based on the entire what's now labelled the successful south frame, but actually looking at specific areas and having specific design guidelines within that. And one of the specific ones would be the Nurstead area. The second one, it kind of comes back to why did we introduce heritage areas that cover Kenny Street or cover Devon Street? I do still believe it's about that kind of that official recognition and being a signpost to our history. People do speak about heritage areas. They go and seek out heritage areas. They value them. Without any signposting and labelling, they get forgotten and they just kind of get left aside.
Okay. I have a lot of questions, but I am going to save them for the administration. So, councillors, if there are no further questions, okay. So thank you, Katarina. So, okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes deputations. We'll now move on to the ordinary council meeting agenda items. The first one is obviously 12.2, which is the Success Hill South Heritage Considerations. And Ms Brennard, I believe that you will be presenting for this one, yes?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just following on from last month's council meeting, we're representing this item this evening, given that it was deferred at the last council meeting. I believe the item speaks for itself, given that there's no significant change from the last time that it was presented, and so happy to just take questions.
Okay. So councillors, unless anyone wants to go first, I've got a couple of questions. There was a statement in the attachment that the percentage of the area with heritage properties does not in itself indicate whether the area has heritage significance or not. I found that an interesting statement, and it also, and this may be a question you have to take on notice, I was rather curious about if the number of properties don't actually constitute a heritage area. I actually ended up wondering, well, how many heritage properties are in Devon Road? And it became, so I went to look up the heritage inventory and decided that was going to take forever, so I left that alone. But I find that a really curious statement, and I'm really struggling to understand that statement in the context of the attachment, and by all means take that on notice, because that is a report that's been produced by a consultant. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it will be taken on notice. However, I think it's probably worth pointing out that the advice represented in this report has been prepared by heritage consultants, so their expert advice is guiding this report.
Okay. So my next question relates to the fact that residents have indicated that the area where the aspiration was to have a heritage overlay was basically Nurstead out from Earlsferry up to the property on Thompson Road. So I'm curious about the lack of inclusion of Earlsferry and would ask, why would Earlsferry not be included in this upcoming workshop? I'm just trying to understand the logic behind that.
Again, Madam Mayor, we'll have to take it on notice.
Okay.
Just as an additional observation, perhaps, this heritage assessment work is part of the town's precinct structure plan, so it's got a broader scope, and that may be informing the answer to some extent.
Okay. I knew that it's part of the work for GHD for the structure plan, and all the structure plan has different sections. I understand that, and that may go some way to explaining to the residents in the room as to why certain areas were included. But that then begs the question for me as to why Earlsferry House wasn't included. So I'll ask other councillors if you want to have questions, because I still have more questions, but I'd ask other councillors if you'd like to. No? Yes? Councillor Carter?
Yeah.
I know I'm a pain on this one, aren't I? The interesting thing about this is that there is a cluster of houses here, and I think the point was made about Devon Road, which nobody argued against, and yet there seems to be a bit of reluctance to consider.
Is there a question here, Councillor?
Yes, so my question is, why is there a bit of reluctance to look at this section in the same generous way that councils of the past looked at Devon Road, at Kenny Street? What is there about this little bit of this area?
I think it may be a different process, but I will ask the officer if you would like to answer that question.
Madam Mayor, that one I will have to take on notice. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillors, further question? Councillor Plifka?
Yes, so in terms of the scope of the report, if the area as identified were reduced in size, consistent with what had been put in the deputation that we've heard from just now, would that alter the expert's opinion? Or I guess framed another way, are we able to inquire of the expert as to whether that would alter their opinion if we had a narrower area?
So, Councillor Plifka, can I actually add to that, because I have a different perspective on that, but I wanted to, if
well, that's my question, so I'll leave it to you. Thanks.
Okay, so if Councillor Plifka is obviously indicating if the scope of the workshop is narrowed down to Nurstead Avenue residents, but my question is, understanding that GHD have to do in-depth analysis of all the different areas that are in the town centre, which I think is the correct assessment. That's. Would it be, and again, I'm happy for this to be taken on notice, would it be possible to perhaps split the areas into two? So you've got the area that's west of Lord Street, and then the area that's east of Lord Street. If there is only one workshop, my next question would be, is it possible to split the workshop into two sections of surveys and interviews? I don't know. I'm just curious about, because this element has been raised by the community several times about the expanded area, and understanding, having spoken to the CEO and understanding this work needs to be done by GHD across all the areas of the town centre, I guess my question is it potentially okay to do two separate surveys and in the one workshop between the two different groups? And again, happy to take that on notice.
Madam Mayor, I might just clarify that if the request is to do a policy as well, we can do a policy as well. My understanding is that the Success Hill South frame, the design guidelines are only for the heritage element. It's not to water down the design guidelines because we're including houses that don't have any heritage value. So the workshop was going to be held just for the design guidelines that represented heritage aspects of that area. So just because the frame is bigger, we're not watering down the guidelines, the built form guidelines, because some houses don't reflect any heritage value. The workshop is always about protecting that heritage aspect that the residents are talking about. It's not going to be watered down, so I'm not sure why that is considered to be watering down. What I'm hearing tonight is we want the policy as well. Let's just do the policy as well, but let's get the PSP done first because we've started that process and we can follow on with the policy. The PSP will give us greater protections under planning than a policy will. So what I'm hearing is we want both. Let us now go back and work out how we get both done. But the PSP has started and my preference is to get the protections as quickly as possible as part of that process.
So can I ask another minor question? In the document, I can't remember whether it was the agenda or the attachment, it states that the local heritage survey is due to commence or be reviewed in 2027, but those 4 additional properties are looking at being incorporated into that. I'm assuming that is going to be done as part of the PSP, is that correct? Which
Yes,
is
Madam
due
Mayor,
to be
that is
finished
correct.
before 2027?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
right, thank you. I just needed to bed that down because I didn't pick that up in the document. And I think that might be all from me, councillors, unless there's some others. Oh, there is one more question, apologies. There's a reference to, in the Hocking Architecture Heritage Report, there's a reference to the Aboriginal cultural heritage associated with the area, but there's very little detail in the report. So there is a further paragraph further down saying that there will be further investigations of that. But I'm just trying to understand how that will be incorporated in it. Again, happy for you to bring back responses later on that one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My understanding, although I will do further investigation, is that it forms part of the Border Town Centre Precinct Structure Plan where the Aboriginal engagement will occur.
Okay, okay. Councillor Carter.
Can I just ask a question following on from that? We know that Success Hill is a massacre site and it's a very important meeting place for Aboriginal people. Now, so are we starting with that as an important part of this, looking at the Indigenous heritage of this area as well?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes.
Okay, councillors, if there are no further questions, I can't see anyone with their hand up. And thank you, Mr. CEO, and thank you, Ms. Brennan. I look forward to, I'm sorry we've given you so many questions, but I do look forward to the responses. So thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which was review of the community leasing framework and property management policy. Do you want to sit at one of the microphones and just speak from there?
If that's okay, it might be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Sorry to have my back to some of the councillors.
I don't think that's a problem. So, thank you. And if you just turn on you. Thank you, my dear. Okay, right.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just get myself organised with my notes. Where did I put my notes? Sorry, I'm just going to get...
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Enjoy your evening.
Sorry, my apologies. So the purpose of this report is for Council to consider adoption of the updated community leasing framework, updated property management policy and the new community facility occupancy guide. As you're more than likely aware, the review of this framework commenced in 2023, with a further review in 2024. As a result of this work, we've tidied up the fees and charges, and we've undertaken benchmarking, which shows that we charge amongst the highest compared to other local governments. We've also strengthened the internal administration procedures to support the leasing framework. We've added a CPI clause as an annual exercise. We've built in a redevelopment clause, and we're adding a community capital contribution policy, which is an agenda item later this evening. Given the substantial work that's happened over the last couple of years in this space for what is effectively for sporting club leases, I'm hoping that tonight will be a fairly straightforward discussion to move this one through to adoption. And essentially what we're recommending is that we retain the existing framework in its current format, inclusive of a 10% GRV, introduce the annual CPI clause that I've already mentioned, and acknowledge the inclusion of a redevelopment clause into our template documents, introduce, sorry, I shouldn't probably say this one because this is subject of another report, and then adopt the Community Facilities Occupancy Guide. I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for what I felt was a very comprehensive report, okay? The only thing that I'm missing, on page 26 of the agenda, it references the graph below, but when I printed mine out, there was no graph. So would love to see that graph, because apparently that makes it really clear what facilities are under what type of lease license, whatever. So, okay.
I'll make that
so that was on
correction.
page 26 of the agenda. There was some additional information in the attachment, so I actually worked it out. So it says there's 13 leases, 2 licenses, Swan Districts and now Faulkner are the licenses. 7 of the leases are community leases, which leaves 9 sporting club leases, but only 4 were listed in the text. So that's fine. Stan Moses operates under a hire agreement. So my question relates to the GRV triennial valuations. Are there significant fluctuations for club-like facilities compared to, say, the residential market? Because I think the residential market's more likely to have fluctuations with GRV valuations than what commercial or sporting club buildings are, but I'm not sure.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I might defer to my colleague, the Director of Corporate Services, for that one, if I may.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I think I don't know that we could sort of make that prediction. I think broadly in terms of property, what we have at the last triennial valuation was a situation where property values throughout Perth were very low, probably at the bottom of the cycle. And the next triennial revaluation is happening at the moment to take effect from July next year. So there's likely to be a very significant increase in the gross rental value of properties throughout the town. However, in terms of levying rates, and also for the purposes of the property policy, it will have an impact in terms of the policy and the 10% of GRV. So it's likely that there will be a significant increase following from the current year, the current triennial revaluation, yes.
Okay. I'm assuming that with the relationship managers involved with these clubs, the clubs would be prepped for information like that, because clearly you don't want clubs to be caught out. And I know that GRV valuations can catch people out. They can sometimes be quite, if we remember after COVID when everyone decided to renovate their homes and suddenly had very significant increases in GRVs. So this is more a statement. I was very pleased to see the inclusion of building utilisation into the track changes in the property management policy. So there's some interconnecting parts in all of this, which if it works really well. So that is pleasing. On page 100, I hope I'm on the right one. On page 163 of the attachments, am I on the? I might have gone on to the other attachment. Obviously, that's relating to the property management policy, which is the last attachment, isn't it?
Apologies, Madam Mayor, which page are you referring to?
Oh, I have page 163 in the attachments, but I haven't got the attachments open.
Yeah.
It actually states that it's providing delegated authority to the CEO only to enter into lease and licence agreements. So my question on that is, firstly, would all brand new leases still come before council for consideration? I would assume yes, even if they're a community lease.
Brand new leases always come through. It's
Yep.
just the renewal of leases.
Okay. So my next question relating to that particular item from a page 163 is, would such delegation not include the mayor given leases and licences must be signed by both? And I'm just unsure on that one, because the commercial leases underneath will always come to council, but the community ones above seem to have delegated authority to yourself. So I'm just interested in how that works in practice.
I think what we're trying to say is if somebody's got a right to exercise a further term and the policy has given us guidance, then I will issue a new lease under the policy guidelines that council have adopted. But when there's a new lease to be signed, of course it'll have myself and your signatures on it. That just won't go through a council meeting.
Okay. I just found that little paragraph not to be 100% clear. So if you want to take, it's the last paragraph on that page. So if you want to take that on and just have a look at it afterwards, that would be great. The next one is, sorry, Councillor Plifka, do you want to actually ask your question?
Yeah, just following on from your point, so where the GRV could potentially result in a surprise, we know that historically, and I don't think you're permitted to do that anymore, but historically in leases you would see what were called ratchet clauses. So you might say that something was market valuation or a percentage increase, whichever was the greater. But obviously that's in a commercial setting where a landlord wants to maximise their return. Given that we're looking at community facilities, potentially would there be scope to have a reverse ratchet clause where you might say that an increase on the GRV is the lesser of the GRV increase or some specified percentage, which provides a floor so that clubs aren't taken by surprise?
Can I suggest that if the clubs are taken by surprise and it's prohibitive to them operating a club, the CEO would request they write to council requesting council consider changes to a more affordable rate rather than building something into the lease. That is typically the way clubs will manage. So rather than
happy with that if they are aware that there is that avenue where they can come and have a discussion.
Okay, Councillor. Okay, this is probably a very minor thing, but on page 8 of the attachment 12.3.4, which is under responsibilities of the town capital upgrades, it basically talks about club contribution. There is no reference to the accepted standard that a club contributes 1/3. However, I understand that there's another policy further along that actually is quite definitively outlines that. So I was just wondering whether you want to make a reference to that as a standard, in this particular document. And again, I'm quite open to your thoughts on that one.
I'm very happy to review, Madam Mayor,
Okay.
make sure that they're aligned.
And that is all I have in questions for this particular item. So, councillors, are there any further questions? Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is 12.4, Delegations Register Review, which is always a fun document to read.
Your favourite. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I hand over to the Manager of Governance, who's spent the time trolling through the annual delegations register for its annual review, which is in April of every year, I would just like to advise that the major change tonight, or in that delegation register, actually has an impact tonight, because one of the first changes we've made is a suggestion that if we have a tender situation where nobody meets the minimum requirements of the tender, and therefore the tender is null and void, we don't have to bring it back to council, because what that is doing is stopping us moving on to re-tendering or going through another procurement process to finish a project. So to me, one of the major changes to the delegations register is in that fact that if we have a tender, the tenderer or tenderers don't meet the minimum requirements under the tender, then the CEO has a delegation to completely stop that tender process and start a new process. But around some of the other changes, I might ask Joe to discuss. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. As has been outlined, what the CEO has brought your attention to is the major changes. This was very much an administrative review, and we've gone through all of the delegations to ensure that they sit well. There is still a need for a very, very thorough review to ensure that you have got it, as much as we are fairly confident that everything is all in line. It does require a fairly significant, it is a large document, but we did want to bring some, as I say, minor, or that one being major. But as you see in the changes outlined on page 32 of the review, in the agenda, we're suggesting that change to inserting authority to decline to accept any tender or tenders which do not meet compliance qualitative or value for money criteria. And you do have the reasons outlined there, and they very much align with what the CEO has presented to you. The further one being the alteration to about tenders for goods and services again, and this is to bring in line to mirror the exact wording of the functions and general regulations, and then some minor word changing to bring it in line with the current narrative that we're utilising for our documents, e.g. guidelines to manual, cost sort to value of, taking some words out there, and once again guidelines to manual. And we have deleted a point 3 because it does not serve any particular purpose. Given that we had a bit of a focus on the graffiti policy, it drew us to give particular attention to the delegations that we had within the delegations register, and that brought us to changing one of these sub-delegates to reflect who actually undertakes those duties, and that being the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainability. So the last 4 areas there, 7.1, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, are all to align the responsibilities for execution of delegation. Those track changes were made, and a clean document is attached. Having this review of the delegations register does in no way stop the council from having an additional or many reviews of this, should there be any areas of concern or sorry, just catching the mayor's eye, areas of concern or clarification that you might wish to have. So the delegations that are in that register, they flow on to, who we have to have with authorisations, who has to have the delegated authority, and thus the primary and annual returns, etc. So there is very much connectivity throughout the organisation. We put those forward for your consideration, Mayor.
Okay. Can I just ask a question in respect to the commentary around the tenders, goods and services? My assumption is if there is no compliant tenders or there is problems with the tendering, and I have no problem with delegating to that being re-tendered immediately rather than having to wait to come to council. My question is, I'm assuming that that would enable the administration to amend the tender documents if required, but not in such a way that would deviate from the aspirations of council that might have been expressed through previous decisions.
Yeah, that's correct, Madam Mayor, particularly but most of the time the tenders are based on technical officers' scope of works, not a council scope of work. But if there was some guidance in a scope that resulted in a tender and we wanted to stray from that scope, we would need to discuss that scope with council before going to tender.
Okay. Councillors.
If I may, Mayor, I would add that in the last year or so, the manuals and the procurement process around tenders, etc., is really quite strict in the framework. So and I did look into compared to some differing sizing councils, and in their delegations register, this seems to be the way that goes to increase the process.
I have most tender documents are prepared by the administration anyway. I have no problem with that. There's just the odd occasional one that may have a specific council directive. That's very rare. It's extremely rare, but I did think I'd bring that up just as a reflecting some of the commentary from the CEO. So, councillors, if there's no further questions on this one, we'll enter into the next one, which is the 12.5 Council Plan Quarterly Report. Mr. CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the third quarter we're reporting on in our 2023-33 Council Plan, ending in 31st of March 2025. The plan, we've identified a table on page 36 of the report, which is a much easier way to track how we're progressing. So out of the 56 actions or projects identified in this financial year, we have 9 completed, 38 on track, 3 under monitor review, 6 not started, and 0 off track at this stage. There is a detailed attachment which goes through each of the council plan items, and each of the council plan items also has a commentary on the last column for councillors so they can actually see the officers' comment. The officers here tonight, or the directors for their respective areas, can take questions now on any particular item if council has those, or we're happy to take those via email during the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillors, questions on this item?
Yes.
Councillor Plivka?
No, yes.
Yep. So I see that in terms of the having this new hierarchy of tracking the progress of items, this is something that we'll see going forward so that we can compare performance over time.
Yes, well, it can be used for that. I mean, we've been using this reporting now, I think, since I've been here nearly 2 years, so it's not new. But this hierarchy, we could compare year on year, but it's probably not a fair assessment of comparing one council plan item against another based on the number of actions, because there's so many competing inputs to an action, whether it's a budget input, whether it's relying on secondary funding from other partners. So, yes, it can be, if council so wish it. The value of it, I don't think, is a true reflection of the performance of an organisation. But if council so wish it, we could do statistics based on year or quarter on quarter.
Well, most of them seem to be in the column they should be in, so it's all going along well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, further questions on this item? Okay. So the next one is the community capital contribution. Mr. White.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you. And this really just follows on from the Director of Community in Place, Michelle, where she spoke about the regime more broadly. So, I mean, this really, the genesis for this was a desire by the CEO to for the town to have some more clarity around which and what support the town might provide to its various clubs and community groups, sporting organisations and so on and so forth. So we've developed this policy. It's a new policy proposed for the town. It complements the other policies that are in this space, which Michelle mentioned. This one's primarily aimed at sporting clubs and community organisations that either have a current lease or may have a future lease or occupation rights in relation to town facilities. It allows them to make an application to the town for a capital contribution. There's no monetary limit or anything like that, but there are different categories. A capital contribution is $5,000 or more to be regarded as a capital asset, and we've introduced the concept here of a major capital project valued at $250,000 or more, which is aligned with the tender threshold, and there are more stringent requirements for clubs to go through in relation to that. We think that policy in conjunction with the new lease management procedure will really strengthen our ability to work with clubs and plan with them for their operational future and their requirements within the constraints of the town's annual budget and long-term financial planning processes. I think what the policy does is it makes it very clear that the town's contribution will generally be limited to 1/3 of the cost of the capital project, and the other 2/3 funding needs to be secured, whether that be a contribution from the club or an external grant or a combination of various things. The other element to the policy is the potential for a self-supporting loan. So some clubs, for example, might be able to partly contribute their 1/3 share, and the town may support them with a self-supporting loan to contribute the remainder of their share. And a self-supporting loan simply means that the town takes out the loan, usually from WA Treasury, and the club would reimburse the town for the loan repayments. None of these things are guaranteed. This policy merely outlines what could happen. Importantly, the town will, the administration will provide an assessment in the first instance in relation to applications made using the various considerations in the policy itself, and then make a recommendation to council. And council will also have the opportunity to consider each and every project as part of the annual budget process, as it does now. And if it approves these projects or some of these projects, to either include it in the next year's budget or at some point in the long-term financial plan, or potentially even at some point beyond that. And obviously not to approve projects if it chooses not to do so. So it should provide a bit of structure. Importantly, it places an emphasis on the sporting clubs to engage with their relationship manager, the town staff member, in terms of formulating these requests. And I think it should give us a much better ability to plan for minor and major capital works that might be desired by our various clubs and groups.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. White. I have a question. I'm assuming that you've made it very clear in the policy that it's at the discretion of council, but clearly if there are perhaps 2 or 3 clubs that might wish to put forward a major project, there would have to be some negotiation about timelines, because we couldn't accommodate everybody's wishes, for instance, in 1 year.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that would be through the relationship manager for each club that information would be disseminated?
Absolutely, and there would be a process because, and often too, I think a lot of the major capital works may well be town initiated as well through our various master planning
Yep.
processes and all the other things that we've got going on at the moment, because a lot of our infrastructure is a little bit aged, so we're trying to take care of that. But these things might be, some change rooms or, female change room facilities for the expansion of female sport, all those sorts of things. But essentially, it's very clear that what this does is brings these out into the open, so we know about them, we can assess them, we can make a recommendation to council, and if council endorses the project, we can compare it in terms of priority with all of the other projects and demands on the town, and time it accordingly. And our new lease management procedure provides a mechanism to, have those conversations with the clubs and strengthen those relationships.
Okay, Councillor Plifka has his hand up. Councillor Plifka?
Yes, thank you. With these self-supporting loans, obviously the clubs will be servicing those. Do they diminish our borrowing capacity with Treasury, or does Treasury take into account the fact that the clubs will be servicing them as opposed to the town?
Thank you, councillor. So the answer is yes. We currently have one with Tadwa. There's a self-supporting loan in place for Tadwa at the moment. The answer is yes, they would be taken into account by WA Treasury as part of the town's overall borrowing capacity. But I would suggest that the quantum would be reasonably insignificant, so as not to have any material impact on the town's other capital borrowing requirements. We're talking about a pretty small number of self-supporting loans for relatively small value, compared to potentially some of our larger capital projects, underground power and so on. I don't think it would have a material impact.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay, councillors, further questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is accounts paid, 12.7. I would ask councillors, if you've got any queries on that, to please write to Mr White via email to get those queries answered, because otherwise they'll just have to be taken on notice tonight anyway. The financial report for March will appear in next week's agenda, which brings us to 12.9. The RFT for Success Hill Drainage Works, which has a confidential attachment. Dare I say that I would hope this might be the last report I see on this particular item. So, do we have any statements that need to be made by the officer in this item, or not?
Sorry,
Oh, sorry. We're going to go behind closed doors? Okay. I will declare this meeting closed at 7:20. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, staff. Thank you, one and all, for a very good meeting.
Thanks, Beth. 7:25, by the way.
I can't see it. I really need to look.
Good evening, everyone. See you later.
Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your evening. Look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thanks,
Thank you.